We've seen these clones in the pandemic period. Jacinda Ardern, Emmanuel Macron, Nicola Sturgeon, let's hope she doesn't go to prison.
Trudeau.
Justin Trudeau, all good, honest politicians. They look the part, they dress the part, they behave the part, they talk the part. They're perfect actors. And that's what we have. Actors who appear to be politicians, who talk the talk, having been trained how to talk, not at Speaker's Corner, but somewhere else, in training schools, generally the sort of corporate training schools that train people to convince you that taking poison is good for you. Being enslaved is a great thing. And they're protecting you and your children and your children's children from all sorts of deadly threats that'll destroy them, that'll kill them, that'll crush them, that will make them disease-ridden, that will ruin the planet, ruin the animals, kill the polar bears, kill the humans, kill your granny. And the best way to get around this is to behave yourself, accept that these clever and educated people with smart suits, with posh accents, with clever language, that they are your saviours. Under the Trojan horse of protecting you against COVID-19, they had experts on television. Chris Tweedy, Neil Ferguson, who were the other one? Patrick Vallance. They'd come on the telly, stand on a rostrum, have a slide and tell you all about the slide, while you stay at home with a mask on your face, washing your hands all the time and fearing you're going to die any minute. And that they did to the whole world. Chuck the dust in everybody's eyes while they robbed the entire planet. The poorest on the earth were robbed and the wealthiest on the earth were enriched. The biggest companies in the world gained wealth and the poorest companies in the world were wiped out. All in the name of protecting you against a microbe. I think it was The Guardian. Might have been Telegraph. And it was a Chinese person in China reporting for them. And then they said, horror of horrors. One of their relatives had had a number of officials burst into the house of their elderly relative and turn around to the elderly relative and say, you cannot have a vaccination. They burst into the house in order to tell this person that they shouldn't have a vaccination for COVID. Even though that vaccination, by the way, is an inactivated virus. Because in China, the general attitude of the doctors has been, if you're elderly, you're vulnerable, you're weak, and if we inject you, we might cause more harm than good. And therefore, nearly half of the Chinese over 60s refuse the vaccinations. And those vaccinations, by the way, are traditional vaccinations, not this mRNA experiment that is still, by the way, an experiment. And now they're going to withdraw it. I think so. I think they're going to withdraw the experiment. When they withdraw the experiment, that doesn't mean they withdraw the technology. Look at The Guardian yesterday. mRNA will save you from cancer and everything else. When I was a kid, I remember this Wurzel Gummidge creature coming on the television and saying, it's going to turn into an ice age. And I even wrote a poem about it when I was at school. The Ice Age man is going to come on telly. Right? And then a few years later, they said it was global warming. It's getting so frigging hot. I remember 1976. 1976 was really hot. Am I right? 76. 76 was really hot. And then I remember some really shitty. I mean, this is the location as well. It's not the whole world. It's not everywhere in the world. You don't know what the temperature is everywhere. And how much has that changed through building, construction, industrialization, urbanization? They have a storm and they turn around and say, well, every single article about the storm will include a paragraph, compulsory paragraph that says global warming is causing the change in the climate, which means that adverse weather events are going to affect us. Then they have a picture of a polar bear on a piece of ice. Do you know how far a polar bear can swim? 400 miles. 400 miles. They can swim. You know, they go on about bloody people on little boats. They can swim 50 times back and forth without landing inside. Artificial intelligence, that's what they're telling you now. Artificial intelligence is going to save the frigging world. It's going to make you all unemployed. Go on ChatGTP. Look up ChatGTP. It's going to take away your job. And some guy came over to me and said, I went on ChatGTP the other day and I looked up your name and I found out that you remember this group and that group, and you did this, you got expelled from that. And I went on ChatGTP. One lie after another. How do they make it up? Where did they make it up? It's one thing to say you ask a computer a question and it replies with some facts that are missing some information. It's another thing you go on to ChatGTP. You ask it a question and it comes back with a pack of lies. Literally a pack of lies. I asked it, I had a document, a web page. So refer to an old web page. I said, this document's on this web page. Can you summarise it for me? Because I thought that might be useful. Summarise some documents and give me a quotation from it. So I did that, and I challenge you to do the same thing. Might work, might not. And then I went on there, tried it, and it came back with this quote and a couple of paragraphs. I thought, well, that's cool. I could use it for all the documents I wanted to do. Like short summations, allow me insight, to allow me to discover more. That would be useful. And then I discovered, then I went back to the original document, the quotation they gave was not in the document. I said, where'd you get the quotation from? He said, oh, terribly sorry about that. I'm really sorry, I apologise. I apologise. A computer apologises. No. A computer, what it is all the lies they told you for the last 50 years, but in particular of the last 5, 10 or 2 years of the pandemic madness, all the lies they told you to incarcerate yourself at home with a mask on, shivering with fear and taking their experiments. All those lies were preparation to get you to believe every frigging nonsense that they put on these computers, that they input to them, and that they feed back to you as if it's truth. Remember how they said the scientific consensus says this, the scientific consensus says that. You must agree with the scientific consensus. Science has never been, can never be, will never be scientific consensus. Science is about questioning, testing, verifying and refuting a proposition, a theory. Without that, it is not science, it's gobbledygook, it's religion and it's lies. These people, the wealthiest people in the world, they've got visions, they've got plans. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, they have conspiracies. And these conspiracies involve control over humanity. The aim is ubiquitous and universal control over humanity. Know where you are, know what you're doing, know what you think, plan and sell you shit that's of no use to you, will destroy you and will ruin your life. That's the idea behind the entire thing. It's not even that they have to think, have one great guru sitting there saying, this is what we're going to do. On the contrary, they've got dozens and dozens of companies all working on one angle or the other. So if one gets knocked down, the other pops up. Another gets knocked down, the other pops up. That's their game. Tweedledee and Tweedledum must control the world. And then their aim is to have these Boston robotic computers looking like men or women or both, wandering around and offering you services. ChatGPT people come out their mouth, sounding like a woman, sounding like a man, sounding like a tranny. And then that ChatGPT will manipulate you, will inject you, will offer you medicine, will feed you, will clothe you, and we will be at the beck and call of robots. That's where they aim to be in 30 to 50 years, maybe even less. So that, ladies and gentlemen, has to be destroyed. And human beings, yes, us lots, have to take control over society ourselves, rather than allowing these psychopaths who control the world today to extend their power and control. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen.